Hello, everyone, and good evening. So sorry for the delay. We had some technical difficulties, but we are here with you. For those who don't know who I am, my name is James Weeks. I'm the author of the book Meditations Across the King's River, African Inspired Wisdom for Life's Journey. I help people with strategies for emotional, financial, and spiritual wellness. For more information about me, visit acrossthekingsriver.com. Today, I have a special guest with us. His name is Baba Femi. He's out of the Houston, Texas area, also known as Chief Femi. He's a babalawo Ifa priest, spiritual advisor, consultant to many. Um, Always on the move, always talking, always trying to empower others. And so we're blessed to have him with us today. Thank you for coming to spend some time with us, Baba Femi.
Thank you for having me, man. It's a pleasure.
Yeah. So I wanted to begin by I was hoping you could let people know a bit about your spiritual journey, how it all began for you, because like for most people, you didn't grow up practicing African-based spiritual traditions. And I was wondering if you could tell us how you got from where you were then to where you are now. And also, I also wanted you to touch on something that I heard you say once on your website, that when you were a child, you were visited by an angel. I believe you said that. You were visited by an angel. And so I'm sure it was a beautiful angel. But I'm hoping you could tell us what that experience was like and how that touched you and how that helped to shape you into who you are today.
Yeah, wow. It's been a minute on that one. Um, this was when I was really at a crossroads. I had visited an uncle in Chicago, summer of 72, 73. And I remember getting there. And by that point, my mom had brought us up in the Lutheran church. And I went to Chicago that particular summer, and I stayed with my uncle, who was a big time minister, preacher in Chicago. Big church. I mean, it's one of those things back in the 70s, when the guy gets spiritual, the guy get happy, they put a cape on him and he get to walk in, he had this big chair. So it was really different. I had been to a few Baptist churches, Pentecostal churches as a young person, but I grew up mostly in the Lutheran church, which is very quiet. And my uncle would always say, well, they're playing over there. You can't really hear them. So I went to Chicago, and he really impressed upon me, true, or what he called true, real Christianity. And I do owe him a debt of gratitude. Simply, he pushed me to study. More so, I would say he probably pushed me to read, and I'm the one that actually put in the study. Well, when I got back home, I was in this neighborhood, growing up in south side of Houston. I mean, we had a viable, functional neighborhood. I mean, Halloween, kids rode bike down the street, not like today. We had everything we needed right in our neighborhood: stores, games, people, park. Everything was right in the neighborhood. You really didn't have to go past a 2-mile radius. You had everything there. So when I got back, that was this lifestyle. Kids growing up, meeting girlfriends, and you got this thing locked in your head all about sin and so on and so on. You can't smoke weed, you can't drink wine, you can't kiss no girls, all this type of stuff. And so it was interesting because I was also, learning. I was really stepping into basketball more than football and baseball and track. And so one particular summer evening, after returning back, I had a very long day. I remember a very tiring day, but it was a fun day. And going to sleep that night, woke up, and I remember seeing over my bed that was a spirit that was just hovering. And I sat up and I looked, I rubbed my eyes to make sure I wasn't sleeping. And it was a very strong aberration of a woman. And of course, people can say, well, it's your mind projected it. Whatever it was real. It was never anything about it to me that was not real. Dressed in white, very loving, very caring. And I felt a sense of nurturing that everything was going to be okay. Well, after that visit, I began my trek, through high school and everything. So by the time I graduated from high school, my freshman year in college, I actually studied the whole Bible my freshman year. That was not a freshman requirement. It wasn't part of the scholarship agreement, but it was definitely something that I read. And my roommate was there, and all the other guys was there. And I kept on playing basketball, doing the things that I came to do at the college, having a great freshman year. But most importantly, I remember that time, completing the study of the Bible.
Wow. And for those that don't know, Baba Femi and I, we have the same spiritual mentor, Dr. Afolabi Epega. And so how Baba and I met was after Baba passed. I wrote something about Baba on one of my website, and Chief Femi saw it, and he reached out to me, and so we've been, in communication ever since. I'm hoping you could tell us what was the impact of Dr. Epega on your life. And I'm hoping you could tell us also about what your journey to Africa was like to get initiated into this tradition.
Wow, it's amazing the questions you're asking me. I think this interview is timely because probably the last couple of months has really been a lot of thought into that. Just this whole journey of mine. I'm coming up this coming January, February is going to mark 18, 19, actually 20 years. 19 as a priest, but actually a good strong 20 years in E5. I met Dr. Pega in actually 2003. I had already stepped into E5, learning from the people in the community for about a year and a half, maybe two. But when I met him, it was a very, very interesting moment. I never forget the phone call I made to the brother. I didn't know Baba Pega had been in Houston for a length of time. So when I called, it was the night before he was leaving. And I remember calling, finally getting a hold of the brother, and he held the phone. He said, "Hold on for a second." He said, "Baba, there's this guy I want to come meet you. We call him Brother Steve." He said, "This is the guy I was telling you about." And I heard Bob in the background say, "Yes, I need to meet him." I left my job. I went over, we set up, we talked. He gave me a reading. Blew me away. So spot on point. We ended up talking for about 3 hours, to where I was the one that initiated that I needed to leave because, it was late. They asked me to stay for dinner. I stayed for dinner. Now I'm doing all this. I left my job. I got on the shirt, tie, everything, man. I got on the slacks. I'm just, all dressed up, for corporate style. And that night, it was a Tuesday night, and I remember it being very, very special. Getting back to work, I was just done, and just being amazed. And the beautiful thing is, he said, "Let's stay in touch." And I remember calling him about a couple of weeks later. He answered the phone. We probably talked anywhere from once to every 3 weeks. We had long conversations till he got back to Houston. And when he got back, we talked about my, whole thing about E5, just being a priest. What does that mean? And we went on and on and on. So he left out, came back to Houston in the fall season, because I first met him in the early part of the year, like around February, March. So by the time he gets back in the fall season, we talk about going through this initiation. And so the fall season of 2003, matter of fact, 20 years ago, or right around this time, maybe October, 20 years ago. And so we planned for the initiation in January 2004. And one of the first things he told me, when I asked about E5, he made it very clear what E5 was not. And based upon the experiences that I had up until the point of meeting him, he made it very clear what E5 was not, which is very interesting. Fast forward 20 years. Even in my discussions, traveling, talking to young priests, avaricious, or just, some of the old guard, we talk about these changes. When I started out with Ifa, that was literally Baba Pega's 3 books, and there was 2 other books that I purchased. Now you have a whole library, a whole cadre of books. Everybody's buying books, and everybody is way ahead of references to some degree than I was. And one of the things that I know that's been lost, and that is there are people nowadays that are not willing to follow protocol. And I mean the protocol of learning. Everybody wants to jump from kindergarten to 6th grade, from 6th grade to high school, and then go get a master's degree. And it's a process. And that's the thing he taught. He taught protocol, the process. That was part of his goal to bridge the gap between science and religion, is that you had to study both. Nowadays, it's not like that with, some people. There are still people who believe in good study, a good student, following protocol, and they're doing very well. But I meet so many priests that have yet to understand what is Obi. Most of them don't even know what that Odu looks like. So I don't know what happened. I think it's just a microwave effect of so much information being pushed out into our society because of social media. 2004, we didn't even have email for the most part. We were still mailing letters. So a lot has changed. A lot has changed. But my early on with him would never be forgotten. Never, ever be forgotten. I remember as much as it was yesterday.
Wow. So for those who are not familiar with our tradition, how would you define Ifa, and what do you think it has to offer people?
Well, the interesting thing about Ifa, and I get to turn 65 next month, and I'm starting to understand why elders don't talk much. Ifa is the wisdom of nature, the natural order of things, universal truth. It can be very independent at times of the Yoruba culture. Ifa is a system. It is the wisdom of nature. It has in it so many facets and dynamics that encompasses the universe. Everything on the earth, everything in different planets, every aspect of nature, and how it connects with one's divine spirit. The Yoruba people have done a magnificent job. In its inception, Ifa left Kemet. When it gets to West Africa, it germinates. It's a living tradition of the Yoruba people. I don't argue that. It goes in the diaspora, the Atlantic slave trade. It goes into South America. It goes into the Caribbean. It goes out into the world, and it germinates in a different way. It's very, very important that we understand that the best of what Ifa is going to be will not stay put within the Yoruba culture. That is not an attack on Yoruba culture. But the majority, the overwhelming majority of people that practice Ifa in this last 5 to 7 years are not Yoruba. They're the children of the diaspora. And so what I spoke about 5-10 minutes ago about people not following protocol, that is not the Nigerians. They follow protocol very well. Most of them follow protocol very, very well. What we're going through is not just a change, but a challenge. In this Aquarian age, how does Ifa fit? It fits very well. Finding how Ifa helps us with our traumas, our isms, our social construct. how Ifa helps us can be very helpful. And that's what I mean. We have to operate independent of the Yoruba culture in those aspects only because most of us are the descendants of slaves. We live in a very colonized society. Our institutions, most of them have run amok. We've been bastardized into believing things we don't understand. And so when you come across a system that gives you the knowledge and the wisdom of self, it's very, very important of how you embrace it. I don't believe blood sacrifice of animals are going to help you get rid of your trauma. Mm-hmm. I don't believe changing the name your mother gave you, the so-called government name, to another name is going to help you find identity. I think Ifa can help us in so many ways if we would understand it in its inception. And for most of us, we have to abandon the fact that it is the culture of another people that is going to save us. If that's the case, we could have remained Christian and still wait on, for the most part, someone that doesn't look like us to come save us, or someone that has been explained in a book to come save us. I believe in the old writing that the first system of salvation is the knowledge of oneself. You can't know God till you know self. You can't love God till you know self. And I think Ifa has the tenets to bring that in for us to know self, as not just as a people, but as a person. So culture is important. Traditions are important, but they also need to be time for change. And what kind of change that's going to be to help us, not just as a people. That's a big thing, but it has to start with person.
I love that notion that it has to start with person. As I work with people over the years, I always like to emphasize, I feel like we all have a contribution to make to understanding spirituality. And when we lose touch with ourselves, then to me, that's when we diminish our power. That's when we don't stand a chance of impacting the world. But then we also don't have a chance of happiness until we could start from, as you said, the inside out, and understanding, who we are, what makes us who we are, and what our own soul and spirit is telling us. I want you to talk about something that has always fascinated me. About when you talk about your journey, you've told me about going to Africa with Dr. Epega, and one of the things he tells you in Africa is you're going to lose your job. For most people who have a job, that's such a terrifying thing. But the reason why I want you to talk about that is because, as I work with a lot of people, they want insight into their purpose, but they're afraid of what would happen if I lose my job, or what will happen if things don't work out. So I'm wondering if you could talk to us about that transition, what he said to you, and what actually happened at your job, and then how you were able to rebound and start doing the work that you've been called to do.
Yeah, it's a very interesting situation. When I was initiated, January 2004, as a priest of Obatala, I was still working in corporate America. Took vacation time in January to go through the ceremony. And I remember in my Ita, my Odu came down as Ejiogbe. And I remember Baba, and I have it all in my notes. He said in one of the, in the translating, he's looking at the Odu, Ejiogbe, some other Odus that came down, and Baba tells me, he said, yes, you're going to lose your job soon. And I said, whoa, hold on, time out. I said, I don't know if I'm ready to lose, I can't afford to lose my job. And he said, but you don't like your job. You tell me all the time you don't like your job. And I said, yeah, but I got a small child, I got a car note, I got bills. And Baba said, well, Ifa is going to bless you. Ifa is going to handle all that. And I'm sitting there thinking, I said, I don't think Baba understands. I really don't think this brother get it about Western society. We need money, we need work, we need the continuity of currency. And the interesting thing is, he tells me, no, this is going to happen. And I'm sitting there thinking, what can I do for it not to happen? And, as time went by, this was January 2004. I think it was in August of 2004. The company that I worked for announced a buyout, that they were going to offer severance packages to people who would take early retirement. Now, I had been there 15 years. I qualified, and I did shock a lot of people. I went upstairs to human resources, went through the paperwork, and they told me what it was going to be. Even as a manager for 10 of those years, that I was able to leave with double salary from each year and things like that. So the buyout was scheduled for October. So it was like late August, so we'd have to work another 2 months to all the paperwork and all the stuff go through. Well, sure enough, the paperwork, I signed the paperwork, and this was around mid-September. This was about 4 weeks from the actual date that I left. And I remember signing the paperwork, and there it was in the print, willful termination. Baba told me I was going to lose my job, but it was going to be good. Everything was going to work out in my favor. And that was really I had to say that was my first lesson in trusting Ifa, trusting that part of divination, and most importantly, a competent diviner. I remember telling him about what it said, and of course, his laugh. He said, I told you it's going to be okay, man. And October 15th, a Friday, I left corporate. And when I left corporate, it was a great feeling, but here was the scariest feeling. October 15th, 2004, I leave corporate America. 2 weeks later, October 29th, the first time in 25 years that I didn't get a check from a corporation or a job. The first time in 25 years. And I freaked out. And I had all this money in the bank from the severance package. And all I could think about was I didn't get a check. And from there, he had told me at my initiation as well that in 1 year I needed to come to Africa to receive Tefa, being a priest, becoming an Iwo. And February 2005, it was actually, I arrived there the 15th of February, the day after Valentine's Day, because my mother celebrated her 85th birthday that Sunday, February 13th. I believe the Monday was the actual Valentine's Day. And Tuesday, I arrived in Nigeria. That was my first time arriving there.
Wow. So let's talk about what you just said about trusting Ifa or trusting spirit in general. You worked with probably thousands of people at this point doing divination, counseling. What do you feel holds people back the most, as far as like whether feeling stuck in life or feeling trapped in life? And do you feel like trust is part of that equation, or them not having the trust in spirit or not having the trust in the spiritual guidance that comes through?
Maybe 5-10 years into divination, I would probably say they didn't trust in the divination. 20 years now, they trusted divination because of my experience. They'll trust me in what I say. But here's the thing, and not to be, letting my ego take precedent, and that is, I recognize people don't trust themselves. Mm-hmm. I realize that people come to a reading and they realize 80-90% of the reading is confirmation of what they already know. Most have confidence now to make a decision, to either embrace something or let it go, to stay or move, to step in or step away. But there's still those individuals who don't trust themselves and the process that has been spelled out. Because even in my initiation, I was one of those. When I got back from Nigeria, Baba told me I was not going to find a job. Welcome to my retirement. Well, I'm 46, 47 years of age. I can't retire. But he said if I was going to send me the check. And 2005 was a tough year coming back. I wasn't working. I did have some money, very, very little money, because I used the severance to get out of debt, which I still think was a good thing to do. By the time a young diviner, with Baba's guidance, I began to develop a clientele. And one particular brother, ex-pro football player, came to me for a reading. He found me somehow. My reading was so spot on point, it helped him with his real estate deals, that he gave me a retainer fee per month that actually paid my car note. At that point, he kind of backed away in the fall season. My elder brother came to me and told me that he had an opportunity to go teach in the University of Maryland in Baltimore, and that they gave him a car. So he had this Ford Explorer left, and he said, you can keep it or sell it or do whatever you want to with it. So I took my car that I was paying for, turned it in, and I started driving his Ford Explorer. At the time, my family had encouraged me to relocate back to my mom's house because I was free and single. So here I am, I moved into my mom's house, which is paid for. I got a Ford Explorer, which is paid for. I got these few clients that are paying me money to do things. And then one of my close friends said, hey, listen, I want to get a reading every month too. So he said, why don't you call everybody you did readings for? So that's what I did. I called about 20 people, 25 people, and they said, oh, wow, I didn't know I could do that. Of course, I'll get a monthly reading. The monthly reading took care of all my expenses. And so to think in early 2005, there's going to be a bunch of Black folks paying me for readings, and Baba had told me, you just trust Ifa. Ifa is going to send you the check. And I didn't know what he meant. What I realize now is when one understands their purpose, when one understands what they're here to do, if you're about the business of getting it done, the universe by law must pay you, feed you, clothe you, house you, nurture you. If it's got to send you all across this planet, that's universal law. And so that's the importance of understanding purpose. So this is why I say it's not the divination, it's the person. Even I didn't trust. But when I saw it unfold the way that it unfolded, I'm like, wow, this is not how I planned it. This isn't how I envisioned it. And let me say this here. Let me tell you how Ifa has jokes. In that time period, I did try to look for a job and no one would hire me. The one institute that was willing to hire me was the Salvation Army. Now, it was actually it was called the Star of Hope Mission. And they said, here's what we want you to do. We're going to pay you very well. We want you to put on a shirt and tie, which is what I gave away. I gave all that stuff away in 2000 when I left corporate. You're going to wear this suit. You're going to wear this tie. When people come in the door, you just have to tell them how wonderful Jesus Christ has been to everybody and show them around the building. And I said, you got me messed up. And Baba laughed, I laughed, and sure enough, this is when things just started to turn. I started using Ifa. I started using my young craftsmanship to my advantage. And since then, Ifa has guided me the way. So when I speak about things of, when you asked that question, back then, yes, the divination, but I think now when I look back at it, people still struggle trusting themselves.
Right. And that's the thing. It's a good point, because what I realized, well, two things. Baba had this saying that he taught me anyway when he was teaching me divination. There's a part in the prayer that says, if you have 16 elders in the room, you can't lose your way. That's part of the prayer, right?
Yeah.
With 16 wise men in the room, how could you lose your ways? And what I've come to realize, well, you could have 60,000 wise men or women in the room, but if someone doesn't want the guidance, doesn't want to listen, you'll still be lost. And
Correct.
So the key is for us and then I also realized, a friend of mine, one of my mentors once told me that there's a difference between wanting help and needing help. And what he said was, a lot
Absolutely.
of people need help, but they don't really legitimately want help. They
Mm.
need it, but they don't want it. So meaning, unless we're willing to do some work on ourselves and be dedicated and persevere with what we feel our calling should be or do, well, then nothing is going to happen for us, you know?
That is true. That is definitely true. Definitely true. And
We're right. Go ahead.
no, I was going to say, it's interesting when you brought up those 16 elders. Um, I never understood what that meant until I think it was about near his transition. He brought it up again. And I asked him, I said, when you say the 16 elders, are you talking about the 16 old dudes? You know how we give that high five? You go,
Yeah.
hey, 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 it was always a classroom with him, always a classroom with Baba.
Question. So we're right on the doorstep of 2023. What advice would you give people about how to maximize the year that's coming up? As we approach 2023, people will say they want this type of change in their lives. They're hoping to see this. What, from your perspective, what guidance would you say? You know what? Here's what I recommend you doing if you really want to, crush 2023. What would you say?
2023, in my feelings, in my opinion, even what I'm seeing now, and conversating with my god brother Baba Shangodari from even an astrological standpoint, kind of backs up, my feeling. And I've actually talked about this in my last class. It scared some people. 2023 is going to be a period to where you have to develop a better instinct of trusting yourself. The more you put into these institutions, political systems, so much of these vices of our society, they're going to be times that's just going to let you down. There's a lot of talk going around about the situation with the NBA player Kyrie Irving and the entertainer, the artist Kanye West. The interesting thing about it is, I remember these conversations in the 90s. And to now see it on the platform that it is from almost a global stage, I wouldn't even look for the right and wrong. I'd find the nearest discussion to get clarity. And see, that's the thing that I feel 2023 is bringing already. It's bringing discussions. You have to talk about these things. There's too many, there's too much still locked away. There's still too much that's covered up. People are now like to use the term, oh, I'm still unpacking things. This is a time to where the universe, the deities, ancestors are pushing us to unpack things. I think 2023 is going to be scary for a lot of people. I also think it's going to be a blessing for the others. And for those that are kind of left over, it's really going to get you to thinking in that gray area. Because it's not just change is coming, change is here. 2023 is just going to lay it out. It's going to lay it out. And you're not going to be able to move the way you used to move. You're not going to be able to think the way you used to think. And that's, everything from our institutes of finance, institutes of religion, institutes of marriage, institutes of health, all the way down. It's changing. And it's going to scare people away from traditions. It's going to scare people away from their isms. And rightfully so. And that's because this is how the universe, this is how the Most High, this is how she moves. And it's always been like that. So I think 2023, and if I had to sum it up in a couple of words, It's really awakening to self. Don't be afraid to awaken to self.
Wow, excellent. So as I work with people over the years, one of the things I often hear is a lot of people they understand the concept of ancestors, right? But I often hear like, well, they don't feel like they're really connected to them, or they feel like, oh, they're not getting any messages from their ancestors, just in general, just in their day-to-day world. Um, what advice do you give to people to get better at recognizing divine messages, whether it's coming from ancestors or spirit guides? What do you find has been helpful for you as you work with people?
Um, my answer to that is what I tell people who I work with.
Mm.
You're going to have to minimize the distractions. There's nothing you prayed for, there's nothing you called for, there's nothing you asked for that in some form or fashion hasn't shown up. Either you don't recognize the sign, the symbol, or you just simply have too many distractions. When you look in the ground and you see an ant, okay? An ant is a worker. An ant knows its purpose. There are many things in the natural world, animal kingdom, the ocean. Everyone has this diversity. There's this great diversity, but everyone knows their role. Everyone has a sense of purpose. They're not compromised. Humans, spiritual beings, the ones with the brain, we seem to be so easily compromised. Now, I can say I have a little bougie Yorkie. I mean, he eats organic food. He has his own cage. He has a body clock. He knows when people are coming home. He knows when it's time to eat. He has these instincts, learned stuff in his environment. But when he doesn't eat his food and he goes outside and he finds certain blades of grass to chew to help relieve constipation, that is amazing to me because he has no medical insurance. He didn't visit a doctor. He didn't get a reading. He followed instincts. And my thing is, I look and I say, where have I compromised him? He's a Yorkie. I can throw something under the couch. He knows how to go get it because that's what they were bred for. During the plague, to bring rodents out from under boxes and things like that. The contract, the blood, the purpose, the instincts are all there. And so when I think of the ones with the brain, the one that, you know, is in this constant flux, I think about how we're not understanding our bloodline, our instincts from long ago. And what gets me is that we have too many distractions. Most of us can't understand what spirit is telling us, whether it's ancestors, divine spirits, God, whatever you choose to think is talking to you. One of the things that you don't hear is the fact that you have no reference to who and what you are. And until you can find out just exactly who and what you are, you're not going to understand any message come to you. And that's why I know I can't do church, because I'm sitting there listening to a message and I'm ready. I'm listening to the ministry. He's going down the road. I'm like, yeah, bring it home, bring it home. Then he starts screaming, he starts hollering, starts yelling, gets all emotional. Message goes out the door. And so at that point, he has to give the people what they want. And I think that's tied to it. People are led too much by emotions as opposed to instincts. People will trust more of an institution than themselves. the pain in a particular part of your body, you know what it is, but yet you need approval from a physician. Once the physician tells you, you can actually go heal yourself with the right herbs and holistic way, or just change some habits. But instead, we incorporate our body with synthetics and compromised chemicals. This is hard to understand what Spirit is trying to tell us. To sit in front of an altar, purge our spirit, purge our true self, purge with sincerity. The only language the universe hears, sincerity, and we get up and we don't hear. We don't listen. We can't comprehend. And that's my point. You're not a good student of yourself. You're not a good student of nature, and you're just not good at blocking out these distractions. We're just simply too compromised. That's the thing I feel about ancestors.
But I love that. I love that notion. Like, we're too compromised, and I think that's so powerful. What you said is, we're not a good student of ourselves, which, being a good student of ourselves mean that we will spend time with ourselves, right? But to your point, I mean, when you look at all the distractions that we have, I am of the opinion that all of these distractions are just there to make sure that we stay disempowered, make sure that we don't ever discover enough of our own spiritual strength to have a greater impact. I mean, when you think about, they give us 24/7 entertainment, or 24/7. I mean, it's just all designed to keep us distracted at every minute of every day. They want our attention on something else except what our own soul and spirit is trying to tell us.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Without a doubt.
I want to ask you this question. So when I think of, one of the things that, when I think of Dr. Epega, things that he said, teachings that he said to me when he was working with me, that I always go back to this teaching. He said that he never understood why people stay in relationships that are not fulfilling. So he always used to say, well, open your doors. I mean, why are you fighting to stay in something that is not good for you? And so one of my messages for those who are listening in 2023 would be to not be afraid of letting people leave your life, and understand that people leaving your life is just part of what you would say is the natural cycle of life. And so when I think of Dr. Epega's teaching myself, what I do is, I imagine that I'm on a beach somewhere and I'm just watching the waters ebb and flow. And I tell myself, James, some people that you like and some people that maybe you don't like are going to be leaving your life. And it's just reality, right? It's just reality. And you must be at peace with that reality, because that is the way it is. That's the natural order. People are going to be leaving, and some people are going to be coming.
Yeah.
We accept that. What are your thoughts on this?
I mean, wholeheartedly. You know, one of the things that some of us have done in our lives, and that is, we got booed up with our teachers. We spent time in a classroom that had been over for the bell rung a long time ago. I myself can look back at my younger days, and you know, I being in E5, I've learned a lot about my younger self. You know, being a young father, you know, being a young husband, trying to make things work. It's so interesting, because see, now when I have clients come, and when I can see these old dudes showing up about letting go, I think the struggle with people of letting go is that you may be more preoccupied with more of what you're going to lose and what you could gain. Because in the middle of what you're losing and what you gain lies your integrity. And your spirit is ready to shift, it's ready to change, it's ready to move, grow. You're getting ready possibly to go down a path that your mate or your friend or this person can't go with you. OIDSI, my organization is a very large organization. You know, people have come to me, even over in Elder in Nigeria said, you know, you have the largest Ile in the world. You know, people have said, you have the largest following in the world. You have more God children than anybody I know. You have more priests under your watch than anybody I know. No one in the world has this. So I'm not looking to be in the Guinness Book of World Records for Ifa. I will say this. I may have done nearly 800 ceremonies, but I do not have 800 God children. People come and go. A few days ago, a young lady told me she is no longer going to practice Ifa. And I let her know that was okay. See, Ifa has always followed everybody on this planet. At the beginning of this conversation is what I'm saying. Ifa is global, it's universal. It's the natural order of things, the wisdom of nature. It does not just belong to one set of people in Southwest Africa. Southwest Africa have a living tradition up under it. But the primary thing is that people don't understand Orumala's role. Orumala is the spirit of destiny. People come and go. Jobs come and go. Family members, they come and go. Everything comes and goes. It's the fluidity of life. It's the flow of life. It's all tied into the drama of the human condition. We love, we hurt, we grow, we get stagnant. We have good days, we have friction. That is the natural order of things. Trying to hold on to something is like sometimes we're trying to hold on to a hurricane and the hurricane is trying to blow in another direction. You know, we see a hurricane come through Texas and then it moves to Louisiana. We don't pray for it to stay in Texas. So sometimes we have to do a better job of recognizing when it's time to let something go. And trying to hold on to it may be tied to our addictions, our traumas, our trust issues, our abandonment issues. And that's what actually, you know, hurts us. There are people that won't step away from a relationship because they don't want to hurt the other person, not knowing they may be holding their significant other from being with the person they really need to be with. You're trying to save the person you're trying to leave, not knowing you may be doing them the biggest favor to finish their life with the person they're really supposed to be with. The path you're traveling now is over. And I think that's, again, that's part of the human condition. That's part of our elevation and growth, because we don't want to be looked upon as bad people. We don't want to be looked upon as a bad person. We don't want to be looked upon as someone who's mean and ugly. No, sometimes it's, in the words of Malcolm X, self-preservation, sometimes the only thing you have. And that is preserving the right for your happiness, you know, your peace of mind, which is priceless. So I've seen clients stay in situations that was over a long time ago. I had a client that came to me and she said, well, you know, my relationship is in trouble. I said, that relationship ended 18 months ago. I can tell you the day. She said, wow, that's when we decide to walk away. I mean, so what did you learn? What did you didn't get? Why are you still there? That nature, not knowing some of these children's contract. Some of these children's contract was to experience divorce. Some of these children's karma from a past life is that they come to be part of a family that's scattered because in a past life they scattered their family. So they come for that. So we're sitting here trying to save our children, and we can look right there in that divination. No, these children are part of their destiny is to experience divorce, to experience breakup of their family. It's preparing them for who they are. You know, if we go back and look at Oprah's past, I don't know if Oprah, being treated by men the way she was treated, assaulted, and went through all that at an early age, would she be the Oprah Winfrey of today?
Wow. Wow, that's a provocative thought. Someone is asking a question, and by the way, I just want to let the audience know we're open to questions, that you have. So someone, Robbie McKinney is asking a question. Is it a good time to initiate? And thanks to all the viewers who are commenting from all around the world. Appreciate you on this session with us. So Robbie is asking his question, is it a good time to initiate? And I would like you to respond to his question.
Is it a good time to initiate?
Yes.
Okay, well, let's bring some clarity to some things. If you have not went through any ceremony in Ifa to receive anything, in my organization, I would like to see you start off at a level of what we call an aberration. That is not an initiation. It is an initiating process, but it puts you into a class to study nature to eventually become a priest of that function of nature. So how one knows one is ready for initiation? It is good to have references. It is good to have a certain community or priest that's willing to teach you. When I came in, I was on the auspice of, I was already up under a priest class when I came into Ifa. In the book Stolen Legacy, the 10 Cardinal Virtues, George G.M. James quotes something from antiquity. The 10 Cardinal Virtues, one of the ninth virtue was confidence of the adept, the confidence of the adept for his master to have the ability to teach him. The 10th virtue was confidence in the adept to learn. So you have these cardinal virtues of a priest class that you must have confidence and faith in your teacher to teach you, but you almost have confidence and faith in your ability to learn. If you're going to go through initiation, you must be ready to learn. And this is what I was saying at the beginning of the program. You can't fast track your way. People's lives are on that map. You can't just say, oh yeah, I see the way y'all sacrifice a bird. I can do that. Of course you can do it. My grandmother did it. My grandmother wringed the neck of a chicken and she cooked it. That's not rocket science of how to sacrifice a bird. The work is internal. For the people on this side of the water, the majority of the work with Ifa is inner Ifa. In the culture and the tradition of people born into something, the inner tenets are locked into the culture. So people know their roles for the most part. But here we start these systems at 25, 30, 35, 40, 45 years of age. We've already lived a part of our life independent of that type of thinking. And so initiation is very, very important. Initiation means to begin again. We as practitioners and priests, when we initiate you, we don't give you anything you don't already have. We help you sign the contract to get a better understanding of what you came here to do. And so one of the proverbs of Ifa, now that we've initiated you, you can now go initiate yourself. In conjunct with having someone to teach you, that is the most important thing. So ready for initiation, be ready to learn, be ready to be patient, and understand that there's never a graduating point. It's a constant, continuous classroom. Any competent priest of 70, 80, 90 years will tell you it's a constant classroom because nature reveals herself in so many ways. It's an ongoing thing. I hope that makes sense to the brother.
Yes. So Cheryl is in the UK, so it's late her time, but she's checking in from the United Kingdom. So her question is, thank you, Baba, for your explanation on the flow of relationships. can you please let us know, how did you know when it's time for someone to leave your life? What are the common signs?
It's all energy. The energy shifts. It's not about something being off, but something that may not be growing in the timely manner that it should be. Now, if you've been married 60 years, I'm sure there's some things that have slowed down. But there's a kindredness of spirit that lets you know this is home. If you've been with someone a short while, or 3 years, 5 years, 7 years, 9 years, things grow. Things grow. But things can hit a peak point to where they can either go left, right, they go up, they go down. Kindred spirits know how to adjust along the way. Kindred spirits finding different ways to support each other along the way. The kindred spirit that slows down and loses its kindredness, energy shifts and changes. When you get attracted to the distraction, or when something pulls you away from the church and into something like Ifa, and your mate is a devout Christian, this is where your spirit, your energy is shifting. It's saying, by your contract, by your divine spirit, you're going to have to go down this path here. This person's saying, I can't go with you. If you can't find the common ground, then you have to be adult, you have to be mature and realize this part of the journey is over. It's no need to fuss, fight, get angry. This part of the journey is over. Thank you for sharing. Now, I know that sounds all kumbaya and esoterical, but in the spiritual world, that is how it's seen. You have time, you share time. Our high school buddies are not always around. Our college buddies are not always around. The first people we met coming up as young adults in the neighborhood, we moved, we relocated, we heard about them, we don't hear from them no more. That's called life. It's called growth. It's called change. You go to these different levels. And every level requires a new you. And so sometimes that level you go to that requires that new you does not require your mate. It does not require the person that you signed up that you thought was going to complete this journey. And I think we have to understand, first and foremost, the energy that's shifting. And we can go to counseling, we can go to therapy, we can have all this stuff, but there's something there, even after all that, that says, I need to go in a different direction, independent of you. So I hope that makes sense.
Good. We just have time for about one more question. And so I wanted to ask you, Baba, what would be your advice to someone who feels like down and out right now, like they're in a dark place? They don't know if they're going to get through this storm called life. What would be your words of encouragement to them?
Well, I think back to my grandmother, my mother, and it's a song. Trouble don't last too long. Mm-hmm. Everything has its season. No one ever promised you things would be perfect. Mm-hmm. Think about, you're 7 years old, you're crying, your feelings are hurt. Why? You got a spanking because you got caught with some cookies. You're crying because you didn't get what you want for your birthday. You're crying because you didn't get to go outside and play. You fast forward. You are graduating from high school. You're hurt. You're upset. You're angry. Why? You didn't get the date you wanted to go to prom. You didn't get the graduation party. You thought you was going to go get a car. We have disappointments in our life. We have seasons in our life at any age, any time, any phase. Again, I call it the drama of the human condition. The only way we learn is through friction. You can't just have good. The only way you know you have good is that you've experienced some trouble and some bad. The only way you can identify hot water is that you've experienced cold. We live in a dimension of opposites. And that's very important. For anyone to think every day is going to be a blessed day, the only thing blessed about the day is that you got up and you saw the sun. And everything else should be easy. But that don't mean you not want to have a fender bender. Somebody say the wrong thing. You may step out of line. Your behavior runs amok. Oh, somebody can tell, yeah, your Leo is such and such in this house. Or, yeah, numerically, this is your day 6. You're going to go to war. Okay, that validates how I'm feeling. But the thing of it is, that's how I learned. Seasons come and go. Trouble comes and goes. Storms come and go. The city of Houston has recovered from Hurricane Harvey about 90%. There's still some parts of Houston have not recovered from Hurricane Harvey. That's parts of New Orleans that have not recovered from Katrina. All around us where people are still making moves to get better in better positions. So that's life itself. Dark places, you don't stay in them too long. The light is coming. Just be ready for it, because if you go into the light with the same energy of the darkness, that darkness has a way of coming back a little bit sooner than it's supposed to.
Beautiful, beautiful. So we'll take one more question. So someone is asking, do you think it's good for couples to get a reading together?
In my experience, absolutely not. Absolutely not. Now, there are couples readings about couple coming to what I call generic things, projects, readings about their children. When it comes to certain levels, I think it takes a very strong couple, a very mature couple, to want a couples reading. I did a couples reading once before, and the couple went home. I got a call 3 days later, and she said he emptied the bank, took all the money out, left her, because I said to him she was the problem why he was not growing. Now, I don't know what he heard. I don't know how he interpreted that. They recorded it. It was nowhere near anything I said. He heard what he wanted to hear because he needed a vehicle to leave anyway. And not having the strength and courage to say so, he blamed me, which I'm okay with. All I spoke was what your ancestors said. I interpreted the older. I remember the couple, I actually gave them the book to read it themselves. So in my experience, if a couple said we want to get a reading together, it really depends on what it is. If it's a fundamental reading about just job, work, kids, things like that, yes. But start getting into the intimacy and the personalities, characteristics, and behavior, I wouldn't touch that.
Wow. Well, thank you for your time, Baba. Thank you all for joining us tonight. Baba, one more thing. How can people get in touch with you if they want consultations or if they're looking for your next speaking engagement? What's the best way for people to get in touch with you?
My website is best. My email is on the website. Okay. There's a lot of people reach out to me internationally from the website. I'm not a hard person to find. Someone told me recently that I'm everywhere and nowhere.
Okay.
They told me I was a ghost.
What is your website for those that don't know?
I'm sorry?
What is your website for those that don't know what your website is?
It's obafemi.org, obafemi.org, obafemi.org.
All right. Well, thank you once again for your time and sharing your wisdom. I know you're busy, so we appreciate this space. And we appreciate all of you who've been in attendance, all your questions, all your energy. We deeply appreciate that. And so wishing you all a lovely rest of your evening. Thank you.
Thank you, brother. Appreciate it. Appreciate everybody out there.